Hey, Jack, can you hear me? Awesome.
Hey, Tone.
Yeah.
I'm having.
Just like here and next to it. Yeah, just for the camera view. And same thing, yes, I got it. I'm already here. All right, morning, everyone. Just in case. All right, are we live on air on YouTube or not yet? We're already live? All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to day 2. Hope everyone had a great time last night. How many people made it out to the carnivory dinner? All right. How was the meat? All right. Excellent. Excellent. All right, guys. I'm going to do announcements after. We got Jack Mullers. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it in person. I'll let him speak. This is going to be more, I'm going to have like 2 or 3 questions for him, and maybe we can do like a general Q&A. Jack, you should be able to see us in the audience, right, through our camera?
Yes, sir.
All right,
yeah,
awesome.
I'm sorry I can't be there, guys. It is entirely my fault. Don't think that it's Tone's. I own this one. But I'm glad I could see you virtually, I guess. And I'm excited, Tone. Thanks for having me, man.
All right, awesome. I want to stay on stage for a minute, then I'll probably go so you can see me through the camera as well. And
Sure.
yeah, if anybody wants Jack to, like, if anybody wants to be seen by Jack, then come sit in the middle. Cool. All right, that's better. No, it's not. How do I put my volume down? That's weird. Anyway, I think it's okay. It's fine. All right. So, you know what, Jack? Why don't you just tell us what the latest is and how's everything going at Strike and what you've seen from global adoption?
The latest is good, man. Bitcoin, what's up 160 some percent this year? That's pretty sweet. Strike's going well. I don't know if everyone can tell by some of our announcements and what we've achieved this year, but the global adoption piece for us is super important. It's become particularly relevant because Binance is seemingly in trouble. FTX is non-existent and in jail. And so having a company that is global and particularly focused on Bitcoin, that's done well for us. It's a really important mission that I think the world needs a global Bitcoin company, and that luckily coincided with a lot of what we ended up shipping. So things are going really well for us. The main mission over the next 12 months for Strike is how many markets can we get in, how many on and off ramps can we allow for, and naturally our products enable cross-border payments, buying and selling, and using Bitcoin probably better than every other service like a Kraken or like a Coinbase. We think we're better at Bitcoin than those companies, and so we're happy. I'm ready for the halving. I'm ready for the ETF. I'm fired up.
All right. One more question, and then I'll probably leave it up to the audience.
Sure.
Are you aware of any other countries that are considering or in talks to do with El Salvador? That's the biggest question you get. The question I want to ask is, no, I probably shouldn't ask, but I hope you didn't get into any legal trouble by working with El Salvador, or you had like really good lawyers to make sure that you had permission ahead of time.
Yeah. You know, Tone, I've been alive for 29 years so far, and what a fucking wild ride it's been. I'll tell you that. It has been quite the journey. Man, how do I answer your question? You know, what I think is really important is it is the project of the government of El Salvador and President Bukele. It is, I'm really proud of the role I played as an individual, but I really don't think it's mine to even partially own, nor anyone else's, to be really, really clear. I think it's really important. So, no, I don't think that there's much upside for Bitcoin, for myself, for El Salvador, for me to really speculate and talk details on, you know, what it was like to get emails from the IMF after that. But it's been a fun life. Hopefully I can live for a very long time and it stays as exciting as it's been. I'll tell you that much, as far as my personal experience has gone. No, I don't know. I could say I expect more countries to follow suit. It's complicated. It's difficult. But long time preference. I expect El Salvador won't be the only one within this. I don't know. What can I say? Decade, maybe. That's safe enough to speculate.
All right, I want to open up the floor. I think a lot of people have questions for you. I'll have one mic. Maybe somebody else can walk around with another mic. So just stand up if you can, so we can see you.
Hi, Jack. I want to thank you for what you've done. I use Strike quite a bit, and I also want to thank you for your personal attention when issues arise, because I know that you reach out to individuals. I wanted to know if you're still I think it was a year ago you were talking about some kind of credit card or debit card, and I was wondering if you were still considering providing a debit card so that use of Strike and funds on Strike can be integrated into the financial system that doesn't do QR codes.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the support, man. It really does mean a lot. We're talking about some of the wild rides I've been on personally, and the support from the community sometimes is all the difference for me. So yes, what you're talking about is a debit card product that we built. I used it for about a quarter. We ran some form of like internal testing with employees and some outsiders, where customers and investors of ours. I made the decision. It's just sitting on a shelf. I actually think, and this may be a hot take, it wasn't a great product. I think that what we learned is rewards on cards is an awful business to be in. You end up competing with Amex, with JP Morgan, that have all the leverage in the world to give far better rewards, and there's no real margin in that business. That business is further monetized by getting a ton of depositors, and then, you know, if you're a bank like JP Morgan than buying dog shit treasuries with that money and giving them all the rewards they want so that they never leave. And so what I learned is a prepaid debit card's never going to compete with rewards. The way it works is when you swipe a card, you collect what's called interchange. And then what these companies do is they pass the interchange that the company that issues the card collects, and they pass it on to the users. The interchange, so basically what we would be able to pass customers for a prepaid debit card, was never going to be competitive. There was no real margin for us, and users might as well use their credit card if they wanted to actually get the most amount of sats. You'll get the most amount of rewards, and you can always turn the cash that you get from your Amex into sats. And so it made us think a lot deeper on what problem can we solve for customers when it comes to Bitcoin. Our customer has turned into the Bitcoiner, or maybe arguably always has been. And so we actually earlier this year did extensive research and talked to Visa and some other banks on what a Bitcoin-backed credit card would look like, where you would actually have a line of credit that you could spend that's directly collateralized from Bitcoin. Actually, you can choose how much credit you want, what your term should be better, your loan agreement should be better, your line of credit would be better if it was a fully collateralized Bitcoin-backed credit card. And so we've looked into that. I can transparently tell you guys, we haven't decided that the market is big enough and ready for that product. But that's just like, I'm being dead honest with you, that's the evolution. We built it, and I realized after using it myself and looking at the economics behind the scenes, I was like, this product's dog shit. I can understand why people are excited about it, but I would highly recommend you go maximize the rewards you would get from someone who is incented to give you the most, and just stack sats that way. And our time and energy was probably better focused on things like launching Strike Africa and Strike Europe. And we have some interesting custody plans that I think are more innovative than a prepaid debit card, if that makes any sense. But, we actively look at how we can give customers a type of product that I think you guys would like, but it just wasn't the prepaid debit card for now.
Yo, Jack, what up? Hey, couple things. 2FA, can you please add it, please? To the Strike app. We've been waiting for that for a while. What's with the empty closet all the time? And the last one is, are you working with Twitter with any more further integration, like a Nostr hybrid type thing?
What was the first one? 2FA? Sure. You can enable a PIN, by the way. So we have the same type of security as like a Cash App. It's worked well, and we think it scales well, but I hear you loud and clear. And so, yes, thumbs up on that. What was the second one? What's up with my closet? I don't fucking know. How do you want me to answer that? It's a room in my house, and I've always worked here. I mean, the truth is, the day I moved in, I had some media. I honestly, maybe I should go check. But it was something. It must have been a CNBC or a podcast or something. And I decided this was the best room in the house to just set my laptop up. And then it became a meme, and I just leaned into it. I love memes. I love Bitcoin memes. And everyone was like, is this kid at the time really trying to talk about disrupting money out of an empty women's closet? And I thought that was fucking hilarious. And I was like, yeah, actually, I am. And so I've just leaned into it, and I love it. It's hilarious. I can't hear you guys clapping, but I appreciate the applause. So yeah, that's the truth. I don't plan on changing it. I love being a walking meme at times. I think it's very representative to get on CNBC and juxtapose a bunch of suits with gray hair trying to defend dog shit treasuries, and then I get on an empty closet. That's hilarious. That's laugh out loud funny. So I love it. I live for it. And what was the last one? Remind me. Oh,
the further Twitter integration for something Twitter. Similar to Nostr. Yeah.
I mean, I'm being super transparent with you guys. The story with Twitter was wild. I was super excited to integrate, and we actually at the time, maybe I tweet these out or something, we had a ton of exploration designs on what would it be like if there were payments integrated in your DMs so that you can actually make P2P type social payments with Twitter? What would it be like if you set your account to a certain mode where for people to follow you, it required a micro payment? And there were a ton of actual plans at the time. And then Jack left, and then Twitter went into this spiral, and everyone that we worked with on this project either got fired by Elon or quit because they didn't agree with what Elon was doing at the time. And so we would go through shuffling of like, who the fuck are we even working with on this? And then obviously Twitter is where it is today. Hilariously, I've become friends with Jack, and it's fun for us to laugh and joke about that in hindsight. But no, I cannot say that, Elon reached out and actively said, like, you know what, I'm just as excited about the Lightning Network as Jack was, and send me those designs. No, that has not happened, unfortunately. It was just a hilarious roller coaster, to be honest. Behind the scenes, it was pretty wild. But the integration is still there. I think everybody knows at this point, as Bitcoiners, we think it's severely underutilized, and we think that there's a lot of upside in having a native currency to the internet for a business like Twitter. But I think time heals all. We'll figure it out, and whether it's us or whether Elon does something on his own, I'd bet over the coming years that there's some Bitcoin strategy for Twitter.
All right, thanks, Jack. We have another question. Michelle, you want to go?
Jack, it's great to, thanks for answering our questions. So the legal and regulatory challenges in the United States are sort of growing exponentially. I work for a Bitcoin company, and it's a really serious challenge. Do you have any hope that that will reverse in any way, or do you think that geographically distributing outside of the states is the only hope?
Nice. Congrats. Who do you work for?
I work for a small company, one of the original ATM companies, Byte Federal. So we have a non-custodial wallet and a point of sale system, but obviously, like, you want to build a lot of features that you're not allowed to build, and you're forced to make a lot of decisions, that you have to make to be compliant, or you get shut down. So it's really hard to build in the space. And I know you guys are facing, obviously everyone is facing the same challenges.
Yep, 100%. I think one of your questions was, do I think it'll reverse course? No. From my conversations with regulators, I think it's very clear. I mean, this goes maybe more macroeconomic, which maybe is some of Tone's expertise, and maybe you guys have already been discussing this at the conference, but I think it's very clear that there's a new interest in Bitcoin from institutional capital, and that interest in Bitcoin is driven by the macroeconomic environment. Is that there's arguably never been a worse time macroeconomic. This is the worst bond market of all time. I think all the banks in America are technically insolvent. And so there's a lot of new interest. I mean, the fact that gold is performing the way it is in the face of a hawkish Federal Reserve is remarkable. And so how does that relate to your question? I think there's a very, very clear effort to clean this industry up so that those that need a clean, regulated on-ramp like an ETF can have one, because there's very serious money that has new interest in Bitcoin. Now, depending on how you look at things, that could be really, really bullish and exciting. That could be garbage full of shit. That's the state overreaching where they should be touching. That's just what I've seen. And so things like Binance, I don't think Binance will be the last and only big investigation. I think that there's a huge effort to clean this place up, whatever the fuck that means, as fast as possible, so that there's an ETF approval, and that as I think the Federal Reserve will have to lower rates drastically again. I think they're going to have to print a ton of money to refinance the debt that's due by 2026, and there's a lot of serious capital that needs Bitcoin to be ready for them to get an allocation towards. So that's why I think the rules are tightening. No, I do not think they'll get any looser. But for Strike, that's why, listen, like I log into my Twitter account and all the time I say, yo, you're such a statist. You love the state. Get the fuck out of here. No, I don't. But I knew the only way for us to be competitive and be a Bitcoin alternative to something like Coinbase is to follow the rules. And the rules have been there ever since. It's just no one was really, truly enforcing them, to be totally honest with you guys. So Strike's got 49 licenses in America. We have a license outside of America. For all my Strike EU people, we now have 2 entities in Europe that we're almost ready to serve customers out of. And so we are very compliant and regulated, and it'll allow us to actually do a lot of the on and off ramp things, a lot of these products that, to your point, are now scary for those that don't have the compliant framework to actually serve. So, if that makes me a fan of the state, I guess I'll go fuck myself. I think I really, one of the reasons I started Strike is because I didn't trust Coinbase and Brian Armstrong to represent this industry. When I was a teenager and in my young 20s, I was part of an era where, Coinbase was cheering on forks that would have killed this space. And so I really wanted to play a role in representing Bitcoin the right way. And unfortunately, according to the law, it takes licenses. So Strike, it actually has given us an advantage while everyone else around me is going to jail. I'm serving and more and more customers in more and more markets. So that's unfortunate reality. I don't think it's going to get any better. I do think that they're trying to clean this up. It is bullish for Bitcoin spot price, but depending on your interest in Bitcoin, the state is clearly here to regulate. There's no doubt about that. So I don't know if that's what answers your question. We actually, the last thing I'll say is we at Strike have actually extended our licensing and infrastructure to Bitcoin companies for this exact reason. There has been companies that have came to us and said, shit, we've realized how we've been operating is actually illegal and we're really scared. Can we sit on top of you guys? Is there any way that can happen? And I said, yeah, of course. And so I don't know if you guys saw Primal, the Nasser client, launched their wallet. That's just sitting right on top of us. And so I'll probably blog about it before the year's over and let companies know if there's an opportunity to utilize what we have. I'm more than willing. But yeah, off the cuff thoughts of your question, hopefully helpful.
All right, we got 5 more minutes and we got 2 more questions. So let's go for it.
Thanks, Tone. Hey, Jack. My name's Stacy Boyle, and I'm the co-founder of Bitcoin Transformation Community. And we go into prisons. Justin Redrick, you guys may know him, Bitcoin vegan from Bars to Bitcoin. We go into prisons and educate inmates about Bitcoin. So speaking of people going to jail, would you be open to hiring anybody that's been formerly incarcerated? Because that's our goal, is to get people who are incarcerated jobs in the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Oh, that was an awesome question. There's someone named Bitcoin Vegan. Was that guy at the carnivory dinner?
Of course he wasn't, but he could have eaten. No, we had veggie stuff there.
I'm only kidding. Speaking of people like SBF going to jail, would I hire? Yes, of course I would. I think on our website, everyone knows I, in really aggressive fashion, dropped out of college. Like, I didn't even get a credit. I got in a huge fight with my dorm mates, actually. So it was like the most egregious way of dropping out of college, and everyone knows that. And so I think on our corporate website, we do say we don't really care about your background. We care about, and we list it, a passion for Bitcoin and extreme talent and work ethic in this space. And so that's always been requirements. So yeah, of course, it obviously depends on the role and the expertise. But no, I would have no issue personally employing anyone with any background, to be totally candid.
Great. We got some candidates coming your way then soon.
Love that.
Okay.
Congrats, by the way. Entrepreneurs Unite on being a co-founder. That's awesome.
All right, last one.
Hey, Jack. Really appreciate all the push you've put in the space and continued adoption, all that stuff. Considering the continued adoption that's going to happen globally and the mempool backing up and increasing transaction fees, the lowering of the subsidy, all that stuff. Closer to the mic. Sorry. What do you see? So far, adoption has been mostly between, people who have economic resources, not those who need it the most, those who are most negatively inflected by inflation. So how do you see the dust problem being solved so that way those with the least economic resources have access to Bitcoin in the future? Does that make sense, my question?
Yes. This just reminds me of, is Giacomo sitting in the audience? This just reminds me of the old days of who tweeted, you know, it was with Roger Ver about whether Bitcoin is for starving babies in certain markets.
Samson Mao.
Samson, that boy, Tone. Yes, you were around those days, 100%. What do I think we do about those that are in an unfortunate stance economically and how they can get access to Bitcoin? I think the community stance has always been, you know, we should not update the protocol or the base chain or core or whatever version of that you subscribe to in unfortunate ways that changes the game theory and changes the core functionality of Bitcoin, poses some risk to the future of the asset, only to speculate that that would better enhance what we think of as poor people somewhere else in the world. You know, what I think you learn to realize is when you actually do customer interviews and you actually talk to these folks, and when you go live in El Salvador and you actually understand what's going on, it's not as cookie cutter as, you know, oh, I'm sitting in my house and I look at mempool.space and I'm looking at a dust transaction not being able to be utilized and it's making it uneconomical. And that makes me want to change Bitcoin entirely because I need to fix the poor. I think that over the last decade that I've been in Bitcoin, that's an overstated and misunderstood problem. I do think, to your point, I think that global Bitcoin adoption is a problem that I'll probably work on and die without fully solving, 100%. And hopefully my grandkids can work on it. But I don't think changing the way the protocol treats its fee market and understands dust transactions. I don't think people like I don't know if you specified a place in the world. So I don't know. I mean, protocols like Liquid, I think, are far cooler than people give credit for. I think Lightning is far from being fully adopted to where we can see its potential. But I don't have any interest in changing the base layer at all for what I think we call poor people around the world. And I actually don't think it would solve any of their problems.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up?
No, I'm just sorry again. I can't be there in person. Looks awesome. I follow everything on Twitter, so it looks like you guys are having a good time. So enjoy. And thanks again, Tone. I appreciate you including me. It's a legendary conference at this point. I remember, here's a story for you guys. First time I ever went to this conference, American Hodl, he taught me how to play blackjack at one of the casinos, and I watched him win. At the time was like one full Bitcoin. I think he won like 18 grand and bought a whole Bitcoin from it. So it's a legendary conference, and I'm jealous of you guys that I'm not there. So enjoy.
All right. Thanks, Jack. Thanks for joining us. Over.
Yeah. Take care, guys.
All right. All right, hope you guys enjoyed that little Q&A. Just a couple of really quick announcements. Oh, can you end Zoom? So I don't have to hear myself. Just like close it. All right, guys, thanks again for coming out early. Looks like we got a nice big crowd. Someone left an orange hat and shirt at the carnivory dinner last night. So just come up and grab that, whoever that belongs to. If not, hopefully they'll come later. And also, someone left, I want to mention the cards. This is the Bitcoin trading cards. I'm sure you guys saw the big stand in the back. This is the commemorative cards for this conference. There was like 5 really awesome rare cards in here. Someone actually left their stack of cards on this desk right there yesterday. I have them. You just got to tell me what the really good card in that stack was, and then we'll give that back to you. Otherwise, I'd love to keep it. It's really good. But if someone did lose some cards yesterday, come by and see me as well. And we're going to get moving with our legal panel. How many of you used to watch the law show on my YouTube channel? That was a really great show. We got to try to bring that back more often. We have one lawyer that tends to be on that show quite often, David Silver. He's going to join us on a panel. I'm going to hand it off to Natalie, and she will introduce the speakers and the panel. And we'll get some more mics.
Thank you, Tone. I'm excited. My best friend is an attorney. Nothing related to Bitcoin, but so this is the Law and Order panel. We're going to focus on the importance of legal engagement and advocacy for Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. So I want to go ahead and introduce. Sure. I want to go ahead and introduce the panelists. David Silver, he's a securities fraud and investment loss attorney. Dennis Porter, CEO and co-founder of Satoshi Action Fund and Satoshi Educate. And Ian Northen, co-founder and chief legal officer at Ocean Mining. Please join me. Yeah, wherever you guys want. We've got the suits. This is like the most formal attire at the conference, I think. So I'm gonna throw out these questions, and I want any of you to share your expertise. I'm not gonna necessarily call on specific people because I would love to know a little bit more about all of your areas of work, but I'm gonna start it out with just the regulatory landscape. So how does the current regulatory landscape impact Bitcoin and the mining industry, and what are the key legal challenges that you see in this area?
Well, that's kind of you. So I just started a Bitcoin mining pool company, and so I think it's a different answer for miners themselves versus pools, but I think you have to face the regulatory uncertainty with courage. And I think a lot of people don't want to do that. I think a lot of people just kind of fawn and pander to the government thinking that they're your friend. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's ever been true if you are a student of history. And I think folks in the room know that. But in terms of the current landscape, I would make a general comment, which is you hear all the time folks railing about regulation by enforcement, right? The SEC or the Treasury or any one of the alphabet soups, at least here in the United States, being very aggressive and suing companies to try and figure out what the law is. And in some ways, I think that's an unfair criticism. Here in the U.S. or in the West in particular, we have the common law tradition. I don't want to go too far down the road here, but for hundreds of years, we had basic rules, very few statutes, very basic rules like fraud or anti-fraud, and the courts would sort it out slowly over time. People knew right from wrong, and you just kind of meander. In a sense, that's regulation by enforcement or enforcement by regulation. But the trend certainly has been to pass statutes, pass regulations, and make federalize all the statutes. And I think that on the one hand is a bad trend, and it's not just for Bitcoiners, it's for any number of industries. But at the same time, the issue is not enforcement and regulation. The issue is corruption when you're doing things in dishonest ways. So again, I think any serious lawyer, any serious company can navigate the waters, but you have to remember that not everyone on the other side of that enforcement equation is acting in good faith. And so there's a meme out there where and I know there's some kids in the audience, so I'll clean up the language a little bit. But there's a meme out there when the law enforcement or the regulators show up your door, what do? You shut up, right? Shut the F up. And there's guys that make a fortune about putting that out there. And that, at its bottom, that is a constitutional protection here in the U.S., but it's also something where you just have to be wise as serpents, gentle as doves. When somebody shows up to your door with bad intentions, be quiet and sort it out. There's plenty of talented lawyers that can help you do it. We heard from Jack a minute ago. They're embracing it, but at the same time, they're keeping a healthy distance and a healthy respect. I think that's the solution, right? Be smart, pay attention, figure it out. And there's other great people they're sorting it out in real time, at the legislative level or other things. So again, just be wise as serpents, gentle as doves, and don't think everybody from the government's your friend. They're not here to help.
Dennis or David, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, so this is certainly something that we face a lot at Satoshi Action. We're regularly engaging with lawmakers and regulators to try to help create a better environment for Bitcoiners and Bitcoin miners. We face a variety of different challenges, some unique specifically to Bitcoin and some not. Recently, we passed our right to mine bill into law in Montana and Arkansas, and people always ask us, like, well, what does it actually do? What does that bill do? Well, it protects from very specific forms of discrimination, because a lot of us know in this room, like, we don't actually need government for Bitcoin to be successful. We mostly just need government to get the hell out of the way for us all to be able to experience the future that we all know is in front of us with Bitcoin. And so with right to mine, what we did was we went out there and we said, okay, what are the ways where they're coming after Bitcoin mining? They're coming after it by trying to discriminate with discriminatory zoning changes, discriminatory noise ordinances, and also discriminatory rate changes. And so we just went out there, we said, okay, we're gonna go out down the line and we're gonna create a law that protects against these sorts of things. And we were successful in doing so. We tried to pass that law in 7 states and ultimately passed it in 2. But already today, in Arkansas, there are folks on the ground who have been protected by this policy. There are miners who are being discriminated against at the local level, and in fact, a judge used our law to protect a Bitcoin miner. So we want to see more of that take place, and now, for us, at Satoshi Action, we want to extend beyond Bitcoin mining, because although Bitcoin mining is really important, to me personally, because I think it has the most value to add today, right now, to Western societies, from its ability to balance the grid, to be able to enhance renewables, to be able to mitigate methane emissions, create rural jobs. But I care a lot about Bitcoin as well. As a Bitcoiner since 2017, I care deeply about Bitcoin. And the next wave of policy that we're going to be working across the country is, again, protecting your right to access Bitcoin and protecting your right to self-custody. And I think that's going to be the huge regulatory battle for Bitcoin miners as we move forward, for Bitcoiners in particular as we move forward.
So I find my role, I think this is my 5th or 6th Unconfiscatable conference, and I did the law show with Tone for years. My role is to generally...
That's awesome, because this is the 4th.
So 4 years.
So I'm not sure how you made it to 5 or 6.
There you go.
Maybe
I've been here so long,
one.
like 4 years. I've done all 4 then. I haven't missed one. So, but Tone actually booed me off a stage in Washington, D.C. before we even did that, because I'm the guy all crypto people hate, because I do believe in enforcement. I do believe in the government. I do believe in holding people accountable and suing the shit out of them. That's my job. My job since 2012 has been suing centralized exchanges and holding and suing people who did ICO crap and stole money. And on every stage I've ever been on, I've always said this, and it's really easy. Don't steal money. The regulators are around because people are stealing money. You know, we can look at what happened in FTX. We can look at what happened. My personal favorite and first one, I usually ask the question, where's Cripsy? Cripsy is what put me on the map. It actually, that case, Paul Big Vern ran off with $8 million in Bitcoin that's now worth $350 million to live in rural China. We're still fighting that case. That case has yielded results. That case has started with law enforcement when they were looking into him, and it's continued through as recently as Binance. That's not going away. And the best part about, we can talk about, you know, enforcement by the SEC and regulation by enforcement, that's all crap. At the end of the day, the government's not going away. They're going to keep doing things. Someone asked me the most important thing that happened in the Biden administration recently. The chief of staff of Elizabeth Warren, who hates crypto, left his job and went to work for the Biden to become the deputy director of the economic team. He did not leave his job at one of the most secure Democrats in the Senate to go run the National Economic Development Team for the Biden administration, because they're not going after crypto. They are going to continue going after crypto. That is the administration. You want someone doing something different, vote them out. But for the moment, this is going to be a forefront issue for people in this space. They just have to know. They have to play by the rules. The rules change on a daily basis. Gary Gensler can't tell you whether something's a security or not. How the hell should you know? How the hell should I know? I've been doing this since 2012. I still don't know what the hell a security is under the Howry test. Anyone who tells you they do, they're lying. They just want to get you to pay by the hour. Nobody knows. The rules are changing. But what's important, you got to try. And right now we're seeing the people who are trying. Coinbase stock, which went into the shitter for most of the year, is coming back because they played by the rules, and now every ETF that's about to be approved in the next 3 weeks, I think 95% of them, only one, is not using Coinbase. That's what you need to know. The people who are playing by the rules are going to be the ones that survive in the end.
It is really interesting, though, that most of the custody is with Coinbase for these spot Bitcoin ETF applicants, and yet there's still these ongoing legal actions and suits with the SEC. So it's like, I see both sides, and actually, I don't know if some of you in the audience have felt this too, but everything in the world today feels like it's one of two extremes. We've got the people who say, you know, Jack is a statist if he's compliant and if he does KYC, and they want total deregulation of everything. Totally fine, okay. Then on the other side, we have Jamie Dimon, who wants to ban the entire industry. So what would you guys like to see that is more of that middle ground, where we prevent customers from losing funds, and we prevent some bad actors from being in the space, but at the same time protect the freedoms of self-custody and also privacy? I hope you guys have all read Preston Pish's recent article about the FinCEN proposals. We have to protect privacy as well, but there are so many shades of gray, so where should we be on all this?
I mean, protecting self-custody is an absolute must. If you can't custody your own Bitcoin, you don't own Bitcoin, you own paper Bitcoin. And we all know how that ended up with gold. So for us at Satoshi Action, we firmly believe, and we absolutely must protect self-custody. That's going to be one of our core missions as we move into 2024 with our policy, which I don't know if those of you in the room saw our announcement. We have bill sponsors in 10 states. We may get up to 15 states. So we're going to be passing this law to protect not only Bitcoin mining, but also your rights to self-custody in up to 10 states, maybe even more possibly by 2024. We really don't believe in spending our resources as a community, as an organization, in Washington, D.C. We think that it's arguably a waste of time, although we love our friends who do spend their time there and who fight the good fight. But especially with now Patrick McHenry coming down off the financial committee, who is an ardently pro-Bitcoin guy, pro-crypto, pro-digital asset broadly, he is likely to be replaced by someone who is not. And so we're now in a situation where there's probably nothing going to happen in D.C. with regards to policy for some time. But we see an opportunity at the state level. We want to see the states act as a laboratory of democracy like they were intended to be. We want to see them compete amongst each other. And so we are all asking that same question. Where is that area where we can, because if you just leave, this is the problem with government. If you leave government to do government, and we all just sit here and sit on our Bitcoin, and we're like, well, we'll just let government do government. They will come up with horrendous policies that will make your life incredibly difficult. So how do we say to them, okay, here are some policy ideas where they get what they want, but they don't destroy Bitcoin in the United States, because Bitcoin will survive. We all know that. But we want it to survive here in America. We want America to be a leader on this technology. So we are actively seeking in 2025 policy ideas. So if you have any, come to us. We'd love to hear them, no matter how crazy they might be, that we can start pushing at the state level. And then eventually, the states can be a bulwark either against federal action or sometimes, and this does happen, the federal government looks at what's going on at the state level and they go, oh, that's the best idea. That's the thing that we're going to do. And then they adopt it at the federal level. That's technically how FDIC insurance was created in the first place. It was a state level idea, and then eventually they sort of adopted that at the federal level. So we like things like, how do I put this? We like things like proof of reserves. Some people don't like proof of reserves, but we like it from the standpoint that at the bare minimum, it's a much, much better idea than whatever they'll come up with.
How many people want to see Bitcoin go to 100,000? I assume most people in the room would be very happy with that. The only way that happens.
Let me stack, man. Come on.
It's the only way that happens is with crypto mainstreaming. And we're watching the ETFs, and that's part of mainstreaming, having financial advisors be able to sell it, not just the people in the room. You guys want to stack early. You guys have been here for apparently 4 years. This is the whole point. What's the problem is, guys like me, I always say, I don't self-custody. I have all of my crypto at Coinbase. I want to know that if I lose my crypto, I can sue somebody. I have over 1,000 active lawsuits against Coinbase at the moment for people who have lost their crypto, it was stolen, their accounts were hacked, a variety of other things. What's important to me is to have able to hold someone accountable. I am in the minority of the people who are in early crypto. I've been here since 2012. I'm entitled to my opinions. Most people, I say it, booed me off stages for these opinions. I get it. But the way for Bitcoin to go to 100,000 is mainstreaming. You're going to have to work with, you're going to have centralized exchanges. We already covered. Coinbase is doing 95% of the custody for the ETFs. That is a game changer because they have to do 3 things, and all of the rules are more than 3 things. But they are going to violate your privacy rights in every manner, way, shape, or form. Privacy does not exist in the United States. Anyone who tells you otherwise, again, lying to you. Coinbase is going to have to know where the money came from, where the money went. They're going to have to know your name, your address, when was the last time you went to the bathroom. They are going to turn you upside down to get your information. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. I fly twice a week. So when I fly, I have TSA pre-check. I have clear. I will give all of my information up so that I don't have as much privacy, but I can cut the line at the airport. I do the same thing with my crypto. I want to be able to hold someone accountable for crypto to mainstream. That's going to happen, and all of the people in state, local, and federal governments, they're going to steal your information. They're going to use it for their own purposes. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not really here to tell you that. I'm just telling you it's going to happen.
You don't self-custody any?
I self-custody nothing.
Oh, man. Someone get this guy a hardware wallet. I think we got some in the back here.
Again, I am a 16th century English major from the University of Michigan. I can do nothing technologically. The fact that I talk on CNBC every couple of weeks about cryptography and crypto is absolutely insane. Thank God I only have to do it in 15-second sound bites.
Before you go, Ian, how many people believe that the majority of Bitcoin users, as adoption grows, will not self-custody? They'll trust a custodian like a Coinbase or whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Natalie hit a point that I'm going to take a little different take on. She's talking about this cultural trend where you're getting extremes, this extreme and the other, and people are looking for solutions, and they're seeing and hearing about the executive branch, the enforcement agencies, or they're hearing about, hey, pass a law and let's go lobby our legislatures. I actually think if you want better results in Bitcoin, you actually have to reform the 3rd branch of government, the judiciary branch. I was a trial attorney for 19 years before I started Ocean with some really talented people. And the reality is that if you want your day in court, your 1,000 lawsuits against Coinbase, it's really hard to get for the average person. You know, lawsuits are expensive, lawsuits are time consuming, and there's corruption in that system as well. So to me, getting back to basics, getting back to our founding fathers, you know, I actually do think you have to starve the Leviathan a bit. You have to actually take some of the flow out of the government. The more you feed it, the bigger it gets, and the more dangerous that is for regular people. So I would encourage Bitcoiners a little bit. I know we get laser eyes and we focus just on Bitcoin, but I do think it's important to pay attention. Look around you, look to your left, look to your right. In your local communities, drive for more subsidiary or decentralization with government, drive for trying to reform at the local and state levels, even the federal level, the judiciary and other things in positive ways. Juries get it right. In my experience, and you know, again, I think Mr. Silver and I will be best friends by the end of this, but I think juries get it right if you can ever get to one. Regular people understand things at a very basic level. If you steal from somebody, that's bad. We can sort that out. You don't need more executive branch agencies or all this weight on top. You don't need special alphabet soup agencies to do it. They all have a role to play, but I think if you starve that a little bit and just get back to basics, give people their day in court, speed it up because justice delayed is justice denied, and give people access to a fair system, more people will be encouraged to participate in the Bitcoin network, in Bitcoin here in the United States, instead of driving companies or individuals who take their sovereignty seriously away. And again, I love the country. I grew up in a very rural area. We were very kind of ruggedly independent. And I'd like to stay. I don't want to have to leave. And as of right now, the jury's out. Like I may have to with my company or my things. But as a practical matter, I'd like to stay. I'd like to do it. I'd like to work within the system. And I think there's room for all of that. But I think the cultural problem is why Bitcoin exists. Bitcoin exists because it came out of a cultural decay of the financial system. But that cultural rot has continued in all of these other areas. So again, do your reading, pay attention, learn more, but don't just think it's just about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a symptom of a larger problem. Bitcoin solves it in many ways because starving financially, look, like that's the source and summit of some of these challenges. You know, the money that pours into things, it's, what is it, Lord Acton, you know, who said power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? The money drives a lot of that corruption, but just don't think it's just there, right? Like, just pay attention, see things for what they are, and I think that helps everybody. And when it comes to law and order, I think you have to be a participant. You know, most of the advice is to stay as far away from the system as possible. That's really for criminal defendants and bad actors who are getting into trouble all the time. But for civil society to work, citizens need to know what their rights are, how do they interact, and how do they navigate those waters. So again, this is a great community for that, because people want to educate themselves, they want to work hard, and I would encourage that in whatever ways that you can.
So just 2 great points that he made. One, I represent the little people. I work on contingency fee. I only get paid when you get your money back. So it's a fantastic way to help people who lost money. And number 2, what nobody talks about on the centralized exchanges is they have the worst terms of service that basically say if you hold your crypto on centralized exchanges, Gemini, Kraken, Coinbase, Bittrex before they went out of business, all these guys, I've sued every single one of them. Their terms of service basically say, if you lose money, it's your fault. They literally, almost all of them uniformly say that if one of their employees steals your money, it is still your fault. Now, obviously, we have workarounds to that, but at the end of the day, knowing where you keep your Bitcoin, and this is the promo for self-custody, as I said, this is where you're getting screwed on centralized exchanges. I completely agree with that, but again, I think that is where, as most people agree, where the future is headed.
I'd love to specifically dig into the topic of privacy more, because Bitcoin sort of answered the call for eCash, where person A can send value to person B without knowing who they are or needing to trust them. But now with the compliance and enforcement actions that we're seeing, less and less privacy seems to be possible. And I think there's a real distinction that needs to be made between privacy and secrecy, right? Secrecy, you're trying to hide something. Privacy, you're trying to protect something. So what is your outlook for financial privacy with Bitcoin when we move into an environment that is more compliant with more and more custodians that are regulated by the government?
I mean, I'll just give you my quick take on privacy. I think that certainly Bitcoin is a massive improvement over the current system. I mean, if you're using Bitcoin, then you're synonymous, or whatever the word that we use in the Bitcoin space. It's a huge leap over where we were previously as a society. Right now, it's like carte blanche. I mean, they see everything you do, especially if you're transacting digitally via the third-party doctrine, which is something we should also consider completely eliminating as a country. And I'm glad to see that some presidential candidates are bringing this up. But ultimately, the third-party doctrine says if you send your information from one person, or if you make a transaction from one person to another, and there's a third party in the middle that collects your data, the government can just go in and take all of that, and they could spy on you without sort of any sort of pushback or any sort of roadblocks. So the new system, Bitcoin, it's vastly different, right? You don't have to share all your information. There's no third party, but there is a little bit of data that takes place out there. And so that's a huge improvement. I like that. I think that's great for privacy. And to be honest, the government, generally speaking, is not going to spend or allocate resources to spy on you unless they need to. So Bitcoin does allow for an option for governments to have some level of traceability and trackability when using things like chain analysis. And I think right now where we are with the adoption of Bitcoin and the potential for governments to attack it, that might actually be somewhat of a good thing in the short term. I know there are a lot of people who are concerned about privacy. It's the only reason they're in the crypto space, the Bitcoin space, that's their thing. So there's a lot of folks that won't even touch Bitcoin. They like things like Monero for this purpose. But for the short term, I think it's a good thing, because it instead of me as an advocate, when I go to talk to these folks in government and they say, well, isn't Bitcoin being used by criminals? Isn't it being used by terrorists? Aren't they doing terrorist fundraising with it? We can turn around and we can say, yeah, certainly that you can access Bitcoin. Anybody can access Bitcoin at any time. It's totally permissionless. But you'd be a fool to commit crime or to raise funds for terrorism vis-a-vis Bitcoin, because even Hamas has turned around now and said to their donors, stop sending us Bitcoin, because they're tracking you down and they're learning about where you're from, and they're arresting some of these folks or sort of targeting some of these folks that are funding terrorism. So that's helpful for me to be able to say. Now, I know privacy advocates will probably say that's sort of something that we need to eliminate completely. We need to completely make Bitcoin totally private. But in the short term, it is helpful for us from a regulatory perspective to not have a huge gavel come down on top of us from the federal regulators.
Mine's really easy. I'm just going to answer from the centralized perspective. Privacy is a myth. It does not exist.
But do you believe that should be the case? That a centralized entity knows your entire balance and where you send any transaction? And if you don't believe that should be the case, then what should we do?
I believe that the government is not going to change, and he with the guns makes the rules, and the government is never going to cede monetary influence without its they will never cede that. So I do not think it's going to change. The monetary system is built in the United States and basically around the world with privacy being a myth, and it's just going to become worse in the crypto sphere. When this started early on in the movement of money, it was better, but now as price has gone up, eyes have turned onto crypto. Privacy in centralized transactions is a myth.
I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a myth. I would say that you can't take for granted privacy. Privacy is something that it's almost binary. It's either on or it's off. And once you give it up, it's almost impossible to get it back. I do think that's true. Bitcoin, the network, is an open ledger. So using an open ledger to do certain things does give a false sense of privacy or security. But at the same time, again, back to the cultural rot and cultural problems, trusting other people with your information is a recipe for a hack or a disaster. Whether it's a LastPass or a bank. I mean, I get a letter like once a month from some centralized exchange or centralized group in Bitcoin or other areas. It's, oh, we lost your information or we got hacked. It's almost kabuki theater at this point, right? It's just laughable. So if you want to be private, you have to take that seriously and take steps to do it. Now, I also think there are some market solutions here, and that's why, like for example, we've taken the approach at Ocean to be permissionless because we take the position very strongly that we're not holding your securities, so the custodianship rules of the SEC don't apply to us. We take the position that we're not holding your money and we're not holding your things in that direct way as understood by the Bank Secrecy Act of 1970, right? So we take a very strong stance that we're non-custodial, and we do that so that we can be permissionless because we think there's a market opportunity for that because miners should be able to get Bitcoins directly from the Bitcoin network without having to register as if they were a felon every time. Again, I don't believe Elizabeth Warren or Jamie Dimon who say all Bitcoiners are felons, right, or terrible people. More harm is done with cash, than Bitcoin. But at the same time, I mean, I see Free Ross, I see Free Julian, I see these shirts. Look, there are people that are sitting in jails or locked in because of their stances on privacy. Privacy is a very different animal, but if you're going to take it seriously, you have to with eyes wide open because it's something very easy to give up, and once you give it up, it's nearly impossible to get back.
That's a really good point, and I know everyone in this room knows it, but there has to be a clear message sent to the folks like Elizabeth Warren and Jamie Dimon that the currency most used for bribery and extortion and money laundering and drug trafficking and human trafficking is the US dollar. There is no runner-up.
Not even close.
And they wouldn't use something like Bitcoin where every transaction is transparent and recorded for all time. So that message, I think, needs to go upstairs. But I would love to know all three of your opinions on things like coin mixers and coin joins. Should they be legal?
I mean, it's code, right? So
I think that's too superficial of an answer. We've actually had a little bit of controversy ourselves because we've been open a week and like 99% of conjoin transactions sail right through our block templates and get processed. But some haven't because they had some bad code and they were bloated and we filtered them as spam. But we have nothing against conjoins. We think being able to process multiple transactions is important. It's an important feature of the Bitcoin network. It's been there from the beginning. And a lot of people have kind of wringed the cloth and tried to get every drop out to try and prevent those sorts of things. And we think that's actually part of the beauty and simplicity of the network. So absolutely conjoins should be permissible and we'll accept them as valid. In addition to that, though, people are talking about, you saw the attacks against Tornado and other things. Again, I don't like to speak too far out of field when I don't know all of the facts of the underlying case, but again, simply creating software that allows people to do with their property what they see fit without anything else, that to me is an overreach, and it starts to create kind of this draconian or ex post facto where, like, you put some software out in the world and, oh, that must be illegal. Phil Zimmerman dealt with that in the 90s. He invented PGP, pretty good privacy, and they came after him. He got sued. The government was trying to charge him with crimes, and it was hard for him. He lived with it for years. His lawyers gave him differing advice. I had a nice chat with him over at Plan B in Lugano. A little shout out to that, right? If you're thinking about privacy, think about a Plan B, right? But the point was, as I'm talking with him about that, he did that with courage. He fought. He continued to fight. Some lawyers were telling him to capitulate. Some lawyers were telling him to stop. It was just code, but at the same time, it was privacy-based. So again, to the point, you have to have your eyes wide open. These folks are not your friends, and if you don't do that, you're going to get snake bit. It's just the way it is.
That's a great story, by the way. Everyone should look that up if you don't know about Phil Zimmerman. I mean, fascinating. And the early days of cryptography are a really important area of history for this space.
Coin mixers are money laundering. They are going to be viewed as money laundering. And if you participate in coin mixing, have a lot of money to pay your lawyers, because Brian Klein's getting about $2,000 an hour right now, and he's the best in the business. It is absolutely insane, but that is money laundering, and that's not going to change. Is it overreach? That is a legitimate argument that it could be overreach. I'm not here to discuss whether the government is handling this wrong, but I can tell you right now, more and more cases are going to be bought by the government for money laundering with crypto. And this goes back to there's nothing private when they start moving through centralized exchanges and Chainalysis, Elliptic, TRM. They can all break through the mixers right now. There is no mixer that truly has made something private, especially the forensic analysis companies like Chainalysis, Elliptic, TRM, they're getting better and better at dealing with microtransactions. So I don't even think that's going to be an issue really moving forward, because the government can now break through that. But yes, mixing is illegal, should be illegal, and sorry.
Just was going to say code of speech, but also it's just funny that they wanted to make something illegal that the banks do on a regular basis.
Right, exactly. What was it, like 93 billion in fines to
They
Chase
launder
recently?
money themselves, so it's just funny that we say the government will make money laundering illegal, but yet they just slap the hands of the people that are doing it at the top.
Well, two of you mentioned overreach. That was actually on my list of questions. So in your experience, what forms of government overreach or discrimination have you observed against Bitcoin, its users, the industry, and how can legal advocacy prevent this?
I think what the government is doing against Coinbase, Kraken, and Gemini is pathetic. We've known for years, the government knew for years what these companies were doing. They blessed what was going on, and to sue them after it became successful is the definition of overreach. They knew what was happening. If they wanted to truly stop this with the alphabet soup in DC, they should have stopped it early on. They are doing this for its political expediency. So you guys thought I was going to go the other way on this, by the way. This is political expediency by Elizabeth Warren and several other people with power within the Biden administration to do this. That's the definition. They're picking on an easy target right now. And for the first time, and I truly believe this is because of Twitter, people are seeing the SEC lose. John Deedon and I, we do the Mario's crypto Twitter spaces every morning. And John is, if you don't know who he is, he's the lawyer who stepped into the XRP fight, represented about 100,000 XRP users in the SEC versus XRP litigation. And for years, or a year and a half, I said, you guys are going to lose. I've always said they were going to lose. They had a losing fight. John, I was wrong. But more importantly than when I was wrong, and I can admit I was wrong because the SEC almost never loses, momentum is a fickle bitch. And right now, the SEC is losing every single case against crypto because of their overreach. All that's going to happen is they're going to change their approach in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. But for what's going on now, it is sad, it is pathetic. They should have done this 5-6 years ago. They let them grow, work with them now. These companies want to work with them. The fact that Kraken paid the $35 million fine, Jesse Powell hates my guts for a variety of different reasons, some legit, some not. But he paid his $35 million. He shouldn't have gotten a 6-month pass from new litigation. Everything the alphabet soup in DC is doing in these lawsuits is wrong, and it's going to change.
So real quickly, the SEC got hit by a federal judge last week on what they call Rule 11 sanctions. It's like the worst thing you can do as a lawyer in federal court is get sanctioned by a federal judge. And, you know, to me, this is a trend that we're going to see more and more. I practiced as a trial attorney for 19 years. I was never sanctioned by a state or federal court. But every fraudster I sued always threatened me with sanctions. Oh, we're going to sanction you. We're going to do this. It's like automatic, right? You know, 57105 in Florida, like these are statutes that are designed to just squeeze the nonsense out of the court system. And the SEC is doing this now at the federal level. The federal prosecutors are engaging in prosecutorial misconduct. Not all of them, but too many of them. And again, I think that's a trend toward federalization of crimes and overzealous prosecution for political reasons. There are solutions for that now. The judges who have lifetime appointments need to sanction them. They need to do it repeatedly. They need to chase that nonsense out of their courtrooms. But that is, again, that's a judicial reform, and unless those judges have courage to do that, it's not going to happen. So that's a trend that I'm seeing, but we're going to see more of it. It's going to get worse before it gets better, I think, in my estimation. But I do think there are signals out there that the overreach has gone too far, especially at the federal prosecutorial level. And then my hope is that they'll self-correct and restrain themselves a bit. There are mechanisms in place to do that, self-regulate, but again, corruption prevents that. So I'm cautiously optimistic on that one.
This is a really important question, and I'm glad that we're talking about overreach of the government. I'm sure many in this room, in fact, let's do a quick survey. I'll ask you, how many people in this room think the U.S. Constitution is a good document, it's a valuable document, and does good things? I would say it's like 90% of the people in this room. But what does that document actually do? It limits government. It restricts the power of the federal government. And I think we need to be looking into the future through the lens of how the founding fathers viewed the beginning of this country, which is we need to do everything possible to limit the ability for government to come in and to interact and to possibly take your Bitcoin or to overregulate your Bitcoin. And we should do that by passing laws that what? Limit government, right? And so that's what we're going to be doing over the next year at Satoshi Action, is we are going to be passing law after law in state after state, limiting the ability for governments to discriminate against Bitcoin miners, limiting the ability for governments to come after you for self-custody, and limiting the ability for governments to stop you from running a node. And that, I think, is what should be our main focus, is absolutely all-out efforts to stop the federal government, to stop the states from stopping you from living a free life.
Well said. Amen. Yeah. And Ian, you brought up Kabuki Theater earlier. I mean, it is so interesting and ironic that the SEC would approve, for example, Coinbase going public, but at the same time, I mean, they obviously know what they're doing. They know what their business is. But then in the S1 filing, Coinbase has to say, we might eventually be found to be selling unregistered securities and you might lose all your money. So it's like, I mean, a lot of people are just wondering what's just normal and ethical. But we've got only a minute left, so final thoughts, and what can people do? Can people who aren't attorneys and who aren't, political advocacy fighters, can they do anything in their communities?
Yeah, sure, thanks. First, a quick thank you for Natalie for good questions, Tone for hosting, all these beautiful and charismatic and hardworking people. It's a lot of fun for me to deal with that. But just as a closing thought, Solzhenitsyn gave a great speech in the late 70s about not telling lies. That's how communism and overreach by the state or socialism thrives. So, the path to that cuts through your own heart. So if you're a non-lawyer, it doesn't matter. Educate yourself. Don't tell the lies. Don't play along with the corrupt system. If you stop it at your doorstep, you're doing one small part. Do the next thing, one step in front of the other, but don't allow yourself to be caught up. Like Coinbase went along with that lie. They tried to participate in it, and now they're getting sued thousands of times by Mr. Silver to my left. The reality is that you have to have principles, think ahead, stick to them, and don't allow those lies to cut through your own heart, whether you're a business or an individual.
There are certainly things that you can do to help make sure that we all head the right direction on Bitcoin in the United States. First of all, that would be to just buy more Bitcoin and exit the system. Number two would be to help educate those in the political realm. We have resources to do that on our website. You can go to satoshiaction.io. We have a one-pager on Bitcoin mining. We have a legislator's guide. In fact, at satoshiaction.org, which is the research arm that I work with, we also have research that backs up the claims that Bitcoin mining is good for the environment. It does balance the grid, and it can mitigate methane emissions. And also, I would say to anybody in the room, I mean, everybody wants to work in Bitcoin, right? That's like the thing. I mean, I'm certainly a poster child of that, right? I've done everything possible I can to operate in the space ever since I discovered Bitcoin in 2017. But it's critical. If in order for me to do my job, which is going out and advocating, telling lawmakers to back the hell off of Bitcoin, politely so, right? We want to be friends with these people to the extent that they're going to pass laws to protect Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. But it's very hard for me to convince lawmakers to protect Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining when there's no Bitcoiners and there's no Bitcoin mining. So if you go out and you build a Bitcoin mine, build a Bitcoin business, that is huge for my ability to advocate for this technology. So please get it out there and keep on building.
I hope next year, which I will once again say was my 5th year at the conference when we're all back together, that you guys all self-custody the world, you guys never lose crypto, and my job is obsolete. So I'm hoping, that's what I'm hoping for, because that'd be the best for everybody.
Thank you so much, Ian, David, Dennis. Give it up for them. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Leave the mics on the chair. Thanks, guys. Wish we had a couple of time. Oh no, leave the chairs. Leave the chairs. Leave, no. Leave the chairs. Leave the chairs. Yeah. Leave the chairs. Like the way they were. Yeah. Wish we had some time for questions, but we are running a little bit behind because of Jack was a last-minute addition early on in the day. So we're gonna make a couple of changes. Unfortunately, James Lavish got sick. He notified me just 2 days ago, and he's somewhat local, so unfortunately couldn't make it. And something happened with Mark Moss as well. I just got a message from him this morning that he can't make it, so not my fault. We try. We always try to put the best speakers on. So we're gonna do the same panel. I'm gonna move to be the panelist instead of the moderator, and Terrence from Swan is graciously stepping up in order to moderate the panel. He's familiar with my work, and he's familiar with Sam Callahan's work as they work together at Swan. And Ugly, you're going to join us as well. Terrence may not be familiar with your work, so but he will wing it from his experience on Wall Street as well. And I'll do a little intro for Ugly. Goes by Ugly Old Goat. You and I have a long history. I'm just going to go through it real quick. I don't know how many people are familiar with Ugly's YouTube channel, but back in my early days of when I was doing YouTube, I was able to read like every email from that came in. And when you start out as a content creator, what happens in the very beginning is people that message you are people that really like what you're doing, and you're so early that almost all the cold emails you get are great. Ugly was an anonymous email. We just started chatting. That's how Tyler Jenks was a cold anonymous email. Leah Wald was a cold anonymous email. That's how I met all of these people, and there were others. Today, this doesn't happen anymore because most email I get is like Luke Dax Jr., like haters, and it's hard to filter through that. And Ugly didn't want to be public, but eventually he became public. So yeah, you can mention it during your intro. We're only going to have 40 minutes, and we're just going to talk about finance and trading. And is the bull market back? And Ugly's been a trader for 30 years.
Great. So I'm Terrence, your last-minute moderator. I work at Swan as a managing director in Swan Private, helping launch new products, including tax loss harvesting, which We launched last year, and that was really good in the bear market. Thankfully, we're no longer in a bear market. I think today's panel, we're gonna focus on macro, but also trading, because we have two traders, Tone and Ugly Old Goat, who is at Ugly Old Goat 1. The reason I know that was because I was trying to find him on X. Can each of you give a really short synopsis of who you are, why our audience should be excited to hear you guys, maybe something recent that you've done that's relevant for the audience on macro or trading? Sam, can we start with you?
I'll start. My name is Sam Callahan. I'm the lead market analyst at Swan Bitcoin. I am an investor. I'm not a trader like these gentlemen over here. But I do a lot of research. I run our podcast, and I do a lot of writing. A lot of the focus is around macro developments because I consider Bitcoin the macro asset, especially heading into the 2020s, which I think are going to be a sustained structurally inflationary period, and you're going to want to own scarce real assets, and obviously Bitcoin is the scarcest of all the scarce assets. And so that's kind of my overall thesis, and it's why I'm here, and happy to be here.
Okay, I'm Ugly Old Goat.
Closer to the mic.
On. Is this on? Okay. All right, I'm Ugly Old Goat, and my friends call me by my first name, which is Ugly. So if you say Ugly, I'll look at you and talk to you. You don't call me Mr. Goat. I've been in Bitcoin since 2013. I used to be a gold buck. In fact, actually minted gold coins back in the day, back in 1979. I actually am that old, and had the largest private gold and silver market. I actually was the first one to decimalize the troy ounce. But that's all water under the bridge. I turned out to, I neglected my fiduciary responsibilities and wound up doing about 12 years with the feds. And came out and had nothing, started selling Dish Network, and slowly got into figuring out how to sell Dish Network, and made some of the top dealers in the nation by using the phone, by using telemarketing and using voice broadcasting. Then I went into the political, that business is completely shut down. But in 2013, I started I'd heard about Bitcoin, and then I studied it, and wow, I caught onto it right away. I said, this is truly an innovation. And so I bought my first Bitcoin. I'm also in my youth,
so,
in my 20s, I was security and commodities. So let me, okay.
So
long story short, I'm just a trader. I teach money management. Most people get it wrong. Most people emphasize TA. I teach completely different. Number one should be money management. Number two is fundamentals. Bitcoin has the fundamentals. It's in a hyperwave. Number three, the last thing you look at is TA. And most traders do not succeed because they reverse that. They look at TA first, and then money management.
Awesome, thank you. Tone Vays needs no introduction, but some of you do not know his vast trading background, including from Bear Stearns, I believe.
Yes. Well, again, the live stream and everyone here, I'm sure everyone's familiar with my work. While I was at Bear Stearns and then JP Morgan, I was more on the risk side of the trading equation. So we were building risk models for traders, but the entire time I was building those risk models, I wanted to be a trader, and I eventually just quit to be a trader and somehow ended up a content creator, and now they're called influencers. Though I'm a terrible influencer, I really don't advertise much. I just try to teach people with as much free information as absolutely possible.
You're a terrible influencer with 250,000 followers on X, which makes me even worse. So as a substitute teacher, folks talking in the back, can you guys move to the sponsor area, please? So everyone can hear, because not everybody is quite awake yet, including your moderator. I just want to get right into it. Trading versus investing. Sam and myself are investors. You guys are traders. We don't think I don't want to speak for Sam. I don't think trading works for everyone in this room, except maybe these two, possibly one other person in this room. Waste of time, retail gets screwed, the market's manipulated, even in Bitcoin, right? We've seen Chinese exchanges allegedly do wash trading and fake price volume all over the place that has mostly gone away with the DOJ and SEC and other US regulatory and other regulator action and authorities going after these exchanges. Sam, can you comment?
Yeah, I don't know about, the odds are stacked against you with your trade with Bitcoin. I mean, you brought up market manipulation, but I just think about the volatility of the asset. I mean, if you look at Bitcoin historically, it moves in a way where for the majority of the time, it's moving sideways or down. And then there's explosive price movements upwards. So I did a lot of research earlier in the year when Bitcoin was around 23,000, and I looked at the last 5 years. And basically, during that time period, Bitcoin's price went up around 123%. Now, if somebody was trying to trade and they caught themselves on the sidelines during the 15 top 3-day moves in Bitcoin over that time period, they would have managed to lose 84%. And so you cannot be on the sidelines and miss those explosive movements upwards, because you could have been long Bitcoin for those 5 years when you're trading it. And if you would have just missed 45 days out of 1,825 days during that time period, if you would have been caught on the sidelines, you would have lost 84%. And so it's extremely important to remember that Bitcoin is a very unique asset because it's being monetized. It is a new asset class, and so there can be these explosive adoption events that you cannot predict. No model can predict, El Salvador coming out and making it legal tender. And so you can't be caught on the sidelines. And so that's why I think investing and holding is the right strategy for most people, because you just can't miss those days. And unless you're a professional trader like these guys, it might be a different story. But I just think the volatility of Bitcoin is something that makes it extremely challenging for the regular person to trade.
Yeah, so time in the market beats timing the market for 99.99% of retail high net worth folks. Unless you have inside information like the folks at Binance, and others, you maybe should not do that. Unless maybe you're ugly old goat or tone vase. So let's get into your trading strategy. Talk to me a little bit more about money management. To me, an example, we were talking back in the speaker's lounge is, hang on, you want to risk a small amount of what you call equity, $5,000 or $10,000, and keep the rest of your net worth in your regular investments, the Bitcoin that you hodl and so forth.
Well,
So,
yeah, let me emphasize, because Corey Klepstein was actually the Bitcoin standard bearer in 2021 because he emphasized dollar cost averaging. And I think to cover that, but that's always what I've emphasized. One of my first articles I wrote is how to have the same results of a professional trader without the inherent risk. And you do that by dollar cost averaging, because by definition, you will buy more at lower prices than you will at higher prices. And
does everybody understand that? Why you're getting more Bitcoin if you dollar cost average the same dollar amount every month or every week? If you think about it, if you're putting in $100 a week, you're buying more Bitcoin when it's cheaper, right? Because price per Bitcoin, the dollar price of Bitcoin is lower, so you actually have more Bitcoin when Bitcoin is cheaper, buying the same $100 a week, and then when it's at 69,000 or 65,000, like in 2021, when a lot of us and our friends aped in, right, at all-time highs or near all-time highs, you're buying less Bitcoin. So if you have this set it and forget it, dollar cost averaging, you will come out better. You're going to have more Bitcoin just dollar cost averaging rather than trying to time it, because what inevitably happens with almost everyone, unless they're insiders or professionals, is you buy at or near the top.
once you have your hodl through dollar cost averaging, now you have a tradable asset, and as a trader, you only want to trade a very small percent of that. For example, as a trader, if you may not have Bitcoin as your net worth, you might have it in your IRA, you might have your housing or real estate or whatever, but you're only trading a very small percent of your net worth, and you only trade a very small percent of the Bitcoin that you own. And it can be done. And in fact, I documented it. We actually documented one of my most successful years in 2021. I started with $7,000, and at the end of the year, I'd taken out 1.4 million. So, and never put a dime in. And so it can be done. What I teach is most large traders become small traders. A few small traders become large traders. And the wise large traders choose to become small traders again. Gonna let that sink in because I've been there and done that. I've been a very large trader. I used to live in Kansas City and had 10% of the Kansas City value line. And I was a large trader and lost it. And Tone's had the same experience. Once you've been through that, you've learned. And so if you're out there and you're not having successful trading, it's probably because you have what I call backwards thinking. You probably think there's magic beans, that you have this TA is going to rescue you. Well, TA is really just a matter of point A and point B, and Zeno taught us that there's an infinite number of points between A and B. So TA is this huge, infinite maze. You can't figure it all out. So you can pick 5 or 6 indicators. I'm only capable of keeping 5 or 6 in my head. So I watch those, and maybe I'll adjust them and change them. But you watch those things, and that's how you apply the TA, but it's always overlapped with money management. And the second thing is your fundamentals, and you've gotten the fundamentals here. Bitcoin is the hyperwave. Bitcoin is the fundamental market that you want to be in. So it's first money management, it's second the fundamentals, which is Bitcoin, and the third thing, the last thing, is TA. And if you have an unsuccessful trading record, you probably have that reversed, and you think that the answer is in TA, and it's not.
Okay, thank you for that. Before we get to Tone, I want to give the investors on stage, meaning Sam and myself, and Sam, if you'd like to take this role, to kind of question or rebut, because you talked about taking $7,000 and going to over $1 million trading, and that's going to appeal to some people who are watching this live stream or recording, or some people in the audience. After Sam and I said, right, don't trade just dollar cost average, you're at a huge disadvantage to insiders. You're going to miss out on the 45 out of over 1,000 days when Bitcoin rockets up if you're trying to time the market and screw yourself and have horrible returns. And also risk adjusted, you're obviously using leverage to go from 7,000 to over $1 million. If you wanted to ask him some questions or make a point.
Refute trading. I just think that most people don't have the risk management skills, and they don't position size appropriately like these fellows are talking about. You have to go in with a plan. I think a lot of people think it's easy. They're just trying to get rich quick when they try to trade. And one thing that they don't think about is the tax consequences. So when you sell a position, if you want to come back in, you basically need it to be your short-term capital gains even to come back in just even on your position. So you need to drop 25% from that when you sold. And so you're kind of uphill battle from the beginning. You have to be right that it's going to drop at least whatever your tax consequences is at the time, whether it's short or long-term capital gains. And so people don't think about the tax consequences when they're beginner traders. They don't consider risk management. They don't consider position sizing, which is what Ugly over here is talking about. And so I think for the most people, yeah, DCAing, buying and holding, and just benefiting from Bitcoin's long-term price appreciation is the correct strategy.
Thank you for that. Tone, you have given a lot of free trading education, and you are also a trader yourself. Do you also have trading courses, or what?
Yeah, I do have trading courses, and eventually I keep slowly dropping the price so that eventually all my education is going to be free, because being a trader is very, very challenging. Like, it is a full-time job, mentally and physically, sitting in front of a computer. I think the biggest problem that people have is they think they can be a successful trader while having another career. And that makes it incredibly challenging. And it was challenging for me as well. Like, I remember like sitting through multiple meetings, like with my phone under the desk, like entering trades, right? And that is probably the worst type of trading you can do because you're not fully focused on it. So number one is, yes, you can play around. You can try, give you a hand to trade. Like, you shouldn't just quit your job to be a trader. But before you start becoming a trader, you want to either trade with very small money to see if you can actually make a good percentage, or you just want to trade paper money but take it super, super seriously. Like, you're trading a fake account, but you're taking it super seriously. Because there's two dangers there, right? If you quit your job to become a trader without knowing what, like, evidence that you've been a successful trader, that's super risky. And one of the most dangerous things in trading is trading scared money. When you're trading scared money, it's going to end absolutely disastrously, right? Like, you need to be trading money that you are willing to lose. And I know, like, people say this all the time, but there's a reason why people say this all the time. There is a big difference between trading and investing. And a lot of people confuse the two. To me...
And Tone, do you also invest, or you trade in size like what Ugly Old Goat used to do?
So my track record in investing in companies is terrible.
How about Bitcoin?
Right. Yeah. Bitcoin is a little bit better. So to me, holding gold, Bitcoin, S&P 500 for the long term is investing. If you're going to be entering positions, even if you're entering positions once a month, that's on the border of trading. But if you're entering positions every week, now you're a trader. So that's a very different environment, right? So as long as you know where you stand, many people can be successful traders, but the chances of you being successful as a trader are no different than you being successful in a startup. It's equally as hard and challenging, especially at first, until you get the hang of it.
Thank you. And so would you agree that your chances of success in a startup, investing in startups or being in a startup and in trading are quite low because you're faced against, it's a playing field that is, you're at a disadvantage because number one, you're the customer paying the bid offer, and number two, you're not the market maker like Merrill Lynch or Goldman making a spread. And then number two, you're up against professionals, sharks like Tone and Ugly, and also the folks at...
Those are all disadvantages.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, right? Everything is against you, right? There's better traders out there. Everything is against you. The tax situation is against you. Everything's against you. But your biggest challenge is still right here. Getting scared when selling when you should be buying, and buying when you should be selling. The biggest challenge is mentally being in that zone. There's a famous book called Trading in the Zone. Your biggest challenge is still your emotions. And another, I guess, a challenge or another problem that people have is when you start out in trading, you want to find the best trader and you want to copy them. I think that's also ends disastrously. Now, if there is a system that copies the trade automatically for you, it's kind of better. But if that person starts making too much money, too many people start copying them, and now it becomes the complete opposite. Now, when you try to copy another trader that you're following on YouTube, it always ends disastrously because you're not in the same mental on the same mental wavelength as them. They may sell and not tell you in time. They may buy and not tell you in time. You may panic when they don't. The best way is to learn as much as you can and then sit down and come up with your own strategy and your own system. Because then only you will trust that system. And other people are going to ask you, well, I want to enter your trades. And you should tell them you shouldn't do that. Because you will never have the confidence in my trades the way you should in your own system. And there's infinite number of combinations of tools you can use to be in that system. Whether you're trading options, whether you're trying to find arbitrage opportunities, whether you have a technical analysis system, or whether you have a system that's based on your own capital, which is what Ugly does as well. So the best way of trading is the one that works for you and only you, and it's not going to work for anybody else.
Yeah, so, sorry, I have a follow-up for Tone. What you said earlier made it sound like when you talk about copy traders screwing up because they don't have the same emotional and mental framework as a trader who might not tell you when they're selling or buying. To me, that's very similar to people who copy us, right, who have done the work, come to Unconfiscatable. I saw dozens of people listening to how the Blockstream Jade folks were during their demo, right? You have all these people who aped in 2021 into Bitcoin, and they couldn't hold on to it, even though they had conviction they're going to buy and hold, right? Maybe they didn't lose leverage, but they still sold, obviously, many of them in 2022. Otherwise, the price would not come down from 69,000 to 14,000, right? So I feel like there's something similar there. Go ahead, Ugly, and then I want to go to we're going to switch to macro.
Yeah, we'll switch to macro and price.
Okay, I want to hit a little bit on the copy trading because that's really great what Tone said. There's so many people on the YouTube that make these wild claims of trading, and they're all bogus, and unless they publish their trades. And there are a few that are out there. I am one. If you become one of my members, you'll see every trade that I'm doing on Bitcoin. It's right there. Another one I know is Trader Tom, but again, to copy trade him is almost impossible because he does enough volume, he gets a tremendous rate. So you don't copy trade, but be careful who you do follow because there's so many people that are out there saying, oh, you know, I made these millions. You're going to have good years and bad years. I don't make money every year.
All right. So before go ahead.
Well, you know, you shouldn't copy other people's strategies, but you can copy mine, which is just buy and hold and stop staring at charts. Go touch some grass, focus on your friends and family, and saving the money that can't be debased or inflated. And like that's the problem with fiat is everyone has to be day traders and staring at charts all day instead of doing more, you know, practical things and valuable things with their time. And Bitcoin allows you to protect your time by saving in the money that can't be debased.
And we're going to segue to macro. That's a great intro to that. I just have a quick story to share with you. I was friends with the #2 private client salesperson in the world for Morgan Stanley, which was one of the dominant private client services firms in the world. They also obviously did investment banking, institutional trading, and so forth. This guy would basically call up prospects, obviously all very wealthy because they know how to curate and funnel. And he'd say, hey, I have a stock tip for you, blah, 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 blah. They're like, who the F are you? So if you watched, I think it's Wolf of Wall Street, somewhat similar but more sophisticated. Guy wore Brooks Brothers suits and all that. So basically what he would do is he goes, because I was talking to him about stuff, and he goes, yeah, Terrence, so what I do is I call these folks, I have a list, and I'll make a price prediction. If it's wrong, I don't call them back. If it's right, I call them back and be like, hey, remember I told you about that stock that was going to pop 3 months ago? And then keep going. And then basically he would look like a genius to some of these folks because even on a randomized basis, right, you're going to be right some of the time on some of these stock picks. And sometimes he take the same stock, say short or sell, just because it's volatile, right, and he'd be right half the time. So half the clients he had called, he would do that. I'm worried that some of these YouTube stars, right, that you're talking about, Ugly, they do the same thing under different accounts, right? Because why not? So if you have a volatile asset, it's like predicting coin flips. At some point, you look like a genius. It's like, oh my God, how did you know it's going to come up heads this time and tails the next? You're just
there are actually financial newsletters out there that take both sides of the same position, and then of course the one that wins, they get the subscribers, and that's the way they set up their financial system. I'd also like to mention trimming.
Sorry, we're gonna move on. I'm sorry. So, we have Sam Callahan up here, respected colleague, and known to many of you. You guys should follow him on Twitter. And also, I wanted to talk about bullish and bearish catalysts, macro, ETFs, if you can kind of maybe give an overview, and you guys are welcome to chime in as well, but we're kind of done with trading. I think we did a lot of that. Some of us were expecting Mark Moss and James, or many of us were looking forward to Mark Moss and James Lavish, and they were not going to talk about trading. But thank you for that. I want to take advantage of your expertise. So if it's okay with you, we'll switch totally to macro ETFs and so forth. Go ahead.
Shifting to macro.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm bullish. I mean, how can you not be bullish? I mean, we've just had Bitcoin rip. There's a lot of bullish developments and sentiment right now around the ETF, and I think it's warranted. I think it's a big deal in terms of just flows and liquidity flows into the underlying asset. You're seeing that in kind of the inflows into these different products like the grayscales and other ETFs already on the market abroad. I think 10 consecutive weeks of inflows, $1.6 billion this year alone. And that's just a kind of a signal that people are interested, and institutional investors are getting interested in this asset more broadly. And you couple that with some of these more broader macro themes in terms of people think that the Fed's done, raising interest rates. They planning on cuts now. That has led to a weaker dollar. And whenever there's a weaker dollar, that is usually a boost to all asset classes. And so the dollar is at a 3-month low right now. Bitcoin is ripping. Stock market is ripping. I think the Dow is at all-time highs now. And then you have bonds actually ripping as well because the yields are finally dropping. And so you have
Why are the yields dropping? Do you guys have thoughts on what's going on there? Are we risk-on environment, so people are just buying everything, shorting, selling, converting cash to risk assets? Because that was kind of unexpected after the so-called catastrophic 30-year auction that Zero Hedge claimed 5 basis points was a disaster. They are off. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, nothing goes up forever. The yields have been rising, and rising. And the longer term on U.S. Treasuries, for me, one of the reasons why I kept expecting them to rise wasn't even because of inflation, was because of nobody wants American debt. And when no one wants to buy your debt, you have to offer them a higher interest rate. And like you said, there was a terrible auction for U.S. long end. And I don't know, the government must have found, some buyers. And I have the same issue with oil right now. Like, it's weird. I don't have an explanation. I don't know why the price of oil has been dropping so much and the price of natural gas, especially with the conflict in the Middle East. And same thing with the bonds. It's a little bit different because they've been going up so much. It's just a pullback. I do expect interest rates to go up again because I think the risk of anyone holding U.S. government debt is very, very high. The risk of default is high for any country, and eventually it's going to come to the U.S. It was interesting what David Silver said on the prior panel where about the U.S. dollar. And I agree, the U.S. government is not going to give up control of the financial system. But there will come a time where they will not be able to hold on to it. The U.S. dollar is now going to be challenged by the BRICS and what they're doing. And the U.S. government did it to themselves by kicking Russia out of SWIFT and confiscating their assets at central banks. And now the rest of the world is going to find and join an alternative. So the U.S. dollar will lose its global control eventually. I still think they have till the end of the decade on that front. And as more and more people adopt Bitcoin, they just will not be able to stop it as much as they try. But right now, it's just the yields are coming down, but I don't think that's going to continue. I don't think they're going to go back to zero. I think they're going to stay somewhat high.
Sam, and then Ugly,
well,
if you have a comment.
I have to push back a little bit because there has been substantial demand for long-term bonds when you look at it. That's the data. I mean, basically record demand, but there's just been so much supply. They're just issuing so much supply that even though there is record demand, there's not enough because they're just issuing so much supply. And one thing that happened recently in terms of the long yield versus the short yield was Treasury Yellen just decided, okay, we're not going to issue more long-term bonds because we are worried about the yields rising given our debt situation. So we're going to start issuing the shorter bonds. And so there's like a flip there. And
so the government's going to screw up again, right? So
right,
now
exactly.
they're issuing short term and the yields are dropping.
Right, but that's why we had, I think this is part of the reason why the yields dropping, because there's just not as much long-term bonds entering the market because they're issue in the shorter term. Combine that with the fact that the market thinks that the Fed's done. There's been some messaging from some of these Fed officials that, inflation might be coming down and we're done with rate cuts, and so the market might be pricing that in as well. But I agree with Tone that long term, yields are probably going to keep going higher because of these inflation expectations and also just the structural inflationary pressures like underinvestment, deglobalization, demographics, as well as the pretty much what we all think is that they're going to have to go back to resort to the money printing again. All those four things are structurally inflationary, and so you'll likely see yields kind of rise in that situation.
Ugly, thoughts on this?
Well, I have a totally different view.
Good.
I don't believe in macroeconomics, and I think you will have the same opinion within the next 2 years. I don't think you'll be able to make sense of what's going to happen.
Is macroeconomics just astrology for men?
It's worse than that, I think.
How so?
You're trying to grab hold of a moving target. And, I mean, you're schooled in that. I understand all the ivory tower crowd looks at that. But you have to start thinking differently because nothing's going to make sense if you're going to go look at all those old indicators based on what we have now. I'll leave it at that. If you want my opinions, I think we had a very significant long-term breakout on gold. In 1980, I was around. I was an active gold trader. We thought gold was going to $3,000. In fact, you've read some of the news. Who was that guy?
Yeah, I found an article quoting Doug Casey. How many of you are familiar with Doug Casey's work? And I can't find the article anymore. It was from 1981. The article was published. I still have like the screenshots, and I think I saved the PDF version of it. And he was absolutely certain gold was going to go to like $3,000 or $5,000.
$6,000 was the top. 36.
Within a couple of years. And he thought everything would collapse and gold would be 5,000. And he's been wrong for 45 years.
Yes. And now I think it will happen. I think one of the things, too, that macroeconomics brings you into air is that you're thinking in dollars and you have things like upside targets. And Tone's a good teacher because he doesn't believe in targets, and I don't either. And I think it's going to be especially true in Bitcoin and other things. If things don't make sense. So if you think you're making it a whole bunch in Bitcoin, you never sell your HODL. But hey, you know what? Your HODL, reward yourself. Take a little bit of that and reward yourself. If you're a small investor, buy yourself a new laptop. If you're a large investor, buy a Lambo. But that's how you reward yourself for being successful. But I think the focus on macroeconomics is going to get a lot of people in trouble, particularly in the years ahead. I think if we want to reset, we can probably go back to them.
Yeah. Let's agree on that. But I do want to talk a little bit about something that James Lavish has talked about, which is this debt spiral crisis. We have all this U.S. Treasury debt that's coming due. Rates are much higher, even at 4+% or whatever, than they were when they were issued, right? And for whatever reason, the U.S. Treasury decided to issue short-term paper just to save a few basis points because the 30-year and the 10-year were a little bit higher. That seemed like a very dumb decision. Sam, do you have thoughts on how imminent is this debt spiral where the U.S. has to refinance this massive growing debt at much higher rates than maybe they anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just the maturity profile of the government's debt, I think it was something about 50% in the next year they'll have to refinance because they issued so much on the short term while rates were really low when they should have been issuing them at the long term. And that's kind of what Stanley Druckenmiller was saying recently when he said Janet Yellen should have been fired because it was the biggest blunder in Treasury history because of that. And it's interesting because households took advantage of it by refinancing their mortgages at low rates. Corporations took advantage of the low rates by extending their maturities on their debt, but our government did not. And so what is likely to happen, and what many think are going to happen, is that eventually the Treasury and the Fed are really at odds with one another, because the Fed's trying to raise rates to bring inflation down. But every time they raise rates, it increases the interest expense and blows out the deficits even more, which is inflationary. And so you're in this period of fiscal dominance where the fiscal situation overrides anything the Fed's trying to do with interest rates to bring inflation down. And so eventually you'll get to a situation where if the Fed tries to keep interest rates long or higher for longer, then the Treasury is going to be like, okay, this is a problem for us. Like, from a national security standpoint, we need interest rates to go down, because from a debt situation, we have to be able to roll over our debt at lower rates because we can't afford the higher rates anymore. So I think eventually the U.S. government, the Fed independence is going to erode away, and the U.S. government's going to basically tap them on the shoulder and tell them that they got to cut rates.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we got 4 minutes left. We're going to go to closing comments shortly, but I wanted to drop a little bomb here, which is, if you look at federal net outlays, St. Louis Fed has a great graph on this. Over decades, the amount that the U.S. government has to pay on their interest is actually pretty low compared to what it was, for example, in World War II. So Morgan Housel, who is not a Bitcoiner, but he has a good essay on this. How the heck, I'm trying not to cuss on stage. My Merrill Lynch trading floor days sometimes comes out. How the heck are we gonna pay down this freaking debt? And the answer is, we never are, but we will grow our way out of it because we did it before. Seems a bit risky. What do you guys think about that?
I'll comment on that real quick. I think everyone knows we're not going to grow our way out of this debt. And
are you sure?
You just try to, they just try to keep it going as long as they can. But I think people at the top of government, even the economists at the government, even Janet Yellen herself, has to understand that this is not sustainable. They just can't tell you that they know that it's not sustainable. But
so the short-term growth in GDP exceeding both sort of inflation and
that's still not gonna. It's still not gonna solve the problem, because we're redenominating the debt, and the biggest problem.
What do you mean by redenominating?
Well, you keep issuing a new debt,
got it.
Because we're always in a deficit, so the government cannot live within their means. And now, in a high interest rate environment, they're gonna realize how bad this is. Where by the end of this decade, the interest on the debt is going to be more than tax collection. Just the interest on the debt. And the reason why this happens is, I believe the founding fathers of America actually understood something. They understood exponential growth and exponential functions. And they felt, this is just my opinion, they felt that if they forced the government to borrow money instead of just printing it, it would make them borrow less money. Because if you give the government the ability to just print money, they're going to go out of control and they're just going to print it. So if we make you borrow, you're going to understand that if you're borrowing, you have to pay it back with interest. So you're going to restrain yourself. After 200 years, this has not. Finally, it's starting to go exponential. But had the government had the ability to print money and not borrow, there would never be interest on the money that's being created by the government. And had they only created the same amount of money they had up to now, instead of $33 trillion in debt, it would probably be around 4 or 5 trillion in total. The majority of it is cumulative interest over the last 40, 50 years. Or maybe it will be closer to 8 trillion. But on the flip side, if you allow government to just print and not borrow, the debt also could have been 100 trillion by now, right? Because they would have had no restraints. So it's this double-edged sword, and every single government has always screwed this up forever, and it's going to happen again.
Yeah, so we're at 16 seconds. Do we want to go over, Ugly? Go ahead.
Real quick, and then we'll do our Bitcoin price stuff, and then maybe we'll take one question.
Seyfedin Amos in the Bitcoin Standard outlined very thoroughly that the only viable competition to Bitcoin is the gold standard. I'm going to stick my neck out, but I do think you will see governments resurrect the gold standard, not because they want to, but because they have to. We will also need to change our currency. They'll probably have to do a 10. Right now, we don't even have coinage that works. If we do a 10-to-1 split, it doesn't change anything, but we have to have a functional coinage in the market. Now, maybe we can do it digitally, but these are two things that I'm not going to be surprised at.
So thank you for that, Peter Schiff. Sam, do you agree?
In terms of being able to grow our way out of it?
That and also the gold point, that we're going to go back to a gold standard.
Well, gold.
Do you see that?
I don't think we'll go back to the gold standard because I still think it has the limitations of lack of portability and verifiability and divisibility. So Bitcoin's
perfect for governments, though.
Yeah, and it would just be going backwards. Bitcoin's going forwards, and if you think about growing your way out of it, if I'm being optimistic, most GDP growth comes from innovation, if you look back historically. And when you think about what's going to cause us to be innovative, it's being able to save. It goes back to the money. If we can't save as individuals, you're not going to make long-term investments, and that's where majority of innovations come from, is small business endeavors innovating. And so if we want to try to grow our way out of it, it has to come from a productivity miracle, and most productivity comes from innovation. And so if individuals can finally save in money that can't be debased, perhaps we can have that productivity miracle that allows us to grow out of this debt situation because we have a money that people can save. The thing is, can it happen fast enough? Can that productivity miracle brought on by Bitcoin adoption happen fast enough for us to grow our way out of it? And that's really where I kind of get a little bit pessimistic. But if I am optimistic about our abilities, it starts with Bitcoin's ability to allow people to save, which will bring on more innovations in things like energy, which will drive GDP forward.
Real quick, I just want to give my closing statement with the price of Bitcoin. Sure. The name of this panel is the bull market back? And Sam answered it as well. I think all of us on the panel believe that the bull market is back. And since everyone always asks me what the price predictions are, I'm going to give you my best guess at the moment. And based on TA, I was expecting a multi-day correction starting 2 days ago. I've been talking about it on my channel, even though I haven't streamed it a bit just because of the conference. And I did expect us to top around, I think, Monday, around that time, Sunday, Monday. If we break the high, like today, tomorrow, which I think we will, I'm expecting the next top to be approximately 48,000. And sometime in early to mid-January, right in time for the ETF announcement. So right now, I'm targeting that we're going to pump into the ETF announcement. And regardless if that ETF announcement is positive or negative, I believe it'll be a sell the news event if we're pumping into it and we're sitting at 48,000 or higher early January when the SEC goes on air.
That's a total buzzkill, by the way. 48,000, man.
In a couple of weeks?
Ugly.
I think that's okay.
That's all right. Ugly.
I don't make price predictions because your guess is as good as mine. That's not how you successfully trade. Although there are some things you can look at, and I would say that Bitcoin does not top until it has a 50% close to a 50% move in a 24-hour period. We haven't had that, but also we're not at contract high, so it may not happen until we get there to that point. This is the problem. Now you have gold that reached contract highs, so that's a whole different market.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, we do have to wrap up with one quick question. Nelly had a question, right? Oh, wait. We'll try to answer as quickly as possible, and then I do want to hand off the mic to D++ for the Lightning LARP.
Can one of you just kind of describe how the dollar was weakened to spark this rally in a way that a non-finance person can understand? And also, I follow a lot of analysts that are talking about trueflation and how we're actually below 2%, some indicators show. So what does that mean for the greater economic picture and the deceleration?
I'll take it first. I'll try to answer it really quickly. I don't think the dollar weakened at all. I know that gold is just slightly at a new all-time high and Bitcoin is doing well.
I think she's talking about the money printing.
Right, that's the thing. I don't think it was that. I think what weakened, what causes a lot of this stuff, I don't think it's the dollar itself that's getting weaker. It's the perception and trust in the dollar that's getting weaker. It's the confiscation of other countries' money, using the SWIFT system for political purposes. I think it's not the actual money printing. I think the money printing can get globally absorbed. There's plenty of demand for dollars, and other countries are printing even more. So it's not that. So I think that's the lead cause of it. And your other question was? Inflation. So inflation being 2% or 5%, I think is too negligible for us in America. For it to make a substantial difference. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but and I know things are more expensive, but again, I don't think inflation is the main driver either. Over a long time, yes, but in a single year, you don't feel it as much. Only after 5 years do you really, really feel it.
For the first question with the dollar, I mean, to break down this in a way that's easy, interest rates and currency rates are really tied together closely. When bond yields are higher for a country, it attracts more capital, and that strengthens the underlying currency that's denominated in those bonds. And so now, the last month, we've seen those yields fall. And so when that happens, more funds flow out of that, and the dollar weakens as a result. So interest rates and currencies are really tied together in terms of their value. And so we've seen rates fall this past month. That's also why we see the dollar fall. And so that's why, as well, you see the way that the Treasury's issuing all these bonds. They did it in a way where they didn't flood the long end bonds with more of them. And so that allowed the yields to fall, which then allowed the dollar to fall. Okay, so that's how I could explain it simply. I hope that made sense. But currency rates are a very complicated part of the market.
Thank you. And with that, we are going to wrap. Thank you to the panelists, Tone, Ugly Goat, and
thanks,
Sam.
guys.
Let's hear it for them.
All right, we're running about 15 minutes behind, so it's not that bad. We got one more really cool interactive session for you guys. I'm going to hand it off to D++ in a second. Thank you, guys. Oh, I gotta bring that painting again. I want every speaker to sign it. I keep forgetting about that. And I'll make a couple of announcements right before lunch. And oh, no, you can leave them. You can leave the chairs. It's okay because they have our logo on. Oh, she wants it. Okay. Okay, cool.
right, ready? These to you. I'll keep a couple, and we'll give these to Kisa. Kisa. Test, test. Hi. All right, let's get my HDMI up here and get ready for the lightning LARP. All right, guys, we're going to get started. I know you're all ready for lunch. We are probably going to keep this a little bit shorter than 45 minutes. So let's get acquainted with one another. Let's get ready, and let's get our connection strings. So this is an interactive workshop, and you are going to need a connection string. I have 2 volunteers. Raise your hand if you're a volunteer. We're going to be passing out our connection strings. And by the way, I'm D++, and this is the Lightning LARP. So show of hands, how many of you have already attended a Lightning LARP, say at BitBlock Boom or BTC++? All right, it's everyone's first time. Okay, so yesterday what we did, if you were here at 9:15 a.m., is we walked through how to use Lightning in a custodial fashion, right? We downloaded a custodial wallet, and as you know, with custodial wallets, not your keys, not your coin. Now, how many of you run your own Lightning node? Show of hands. And how many of you would love to learn how it's done? All right, well, you've come to the right place. This is the Lightning LARP. Now, this workshop has taken me 2.5 years in the making to figure out how to demonstrate how to be a node runner in 30 minutes or less. All right, so does everybody have their connection string? Can you raise your hand if you don't have one? We will come to you. Anybody need one? Okay, one guy over here. Anyone else? Show of hands if you do not yet have your connection string. Okay, so what you're gonna do, and this is an interactive workshop, so you're gonna be on your feet, you're gonna be moving around, and you're gonna be meeting and conversing with new people. Step 1 is to open up your scanner on your phone, your camera app, let's say on iPhone, and scan this QR code, okay? Easy. You scan this QR code, and it's gonna open with a browser. So head over to your web browser, and you're going to see a wallet. And the wallet is going to look something like this. Okay? Easy, right? Awesome. So this wallet is made by my friends Clams, and it is the most elegant user interface for Core Lightning. So question, is this Lightning node in your phone? Is it running on your phone? Someone's shaking their head no. No, this is a user interface for a Lightning node that is running on an AWS instance. Now, for the sake of this conversation, we've taken care of all of the DevOps on your behalf. Now, if you were to be your own node runner, the Core Lightning instance would be running on your computer or your Raspberry Pi or your AWS instance, okay? But again, we've taken care of that for you today, and we're gonna be demonstrating what it means to be a node runner. Now, does everybody have Clams up on their phone? We're good, okay, easy. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what it means to be a Lightning node runner. Now, if I wanna send a payment via Lightning to, say, Carol, I need to have what's called a payment channel open to her. Okay, now what is a payment channel? What is a Lightning payment channel? Anyone? It's a way to send sats back and forth. But what does that look like under the hood? Yep, we've allocated sats. Under the hood, it's an on-chain transaction. It's a 2-of-2 multi-signature vault with me and my channel partner. Okay? So I've created a channel with Bob, right? We've locked up funds in a Bitcoin transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain, all right? Now, because we've locked up these funds, you can think of it as being like a joint bank account between me and Bob, right? Anytime Bob and I want to transact, we can create pre-signed transactions that are cryptographically sound. But if we know we're going to transact a lot, what if we just withheld those transactions from the Bitcoin blockchain and just never published them? What do you guys think about that idea? If there was a way to write a check and have that check be cryptographically sound, I could write a check to, say, my husband, and then he could write a check back to me, and so on and so forth. But what's the point of going to the bank? What if we just passed checks back and forth that we signed, but we don't need to go to the bank to ever settle that transaction, okay? That's what a Lightning channel is. Now, let's say that I want to pay Carol, but I don't have a payment channel with her. I have a channel to Bob, and Bob has a channel to Carol. How can I make a payment to Carol over the Lightning Network? Through Bob, through way of Bob. I'll say, hey, Bob, here are the sats. Can you forward these along to Carol? And he'll say, yeah, but that might cost you. I might charge you a single Satoshi to forward this payment, or I might even charge you a milli-Satoshi, a fraction of a Satoshi, because on the Lightning Network, believe it or not, Satoshis are subdivisible. All right, now before we get started with the demonstration, one thing I do need to mention is that channels are bidirectional, okay? If I'm Alice and I want to send Satoshis to Bob, I need to make sure the Satoshis can move in the correct direction. Okay, so I'm going to have some Satoshis on my side of the channel, and Bob is going to have Satoshis also on his side of the channel that he is the owner of. Now, the sats on my side, you can call them local liquidity, or you can call them outbound liquidity. But I like to just say they're sendable sats. They're sats that I can send out on the network. So if you hear words like outbound or local, just know those mean that they're my sats that I own that I can send to Bob. Now in this example, I have 1 million of those sendable sats. So if I want to pay up to 1 million sats per Bob, I can through this payment channel. Now, if I want to send more than 1 million sats to Bob, can I through this channel? No, because the channel limits the maximum payment that is available to be sent to Bob. Now, what if Bob wants to send through this payment channel sats to me? He doesn't have any on his side. We have a channel together, but he does not have sendable sats that he can send to me. Now, another way of saying this is there's no remote liquidity, or there's no inbound liquidity. How many of you have heard words like inbound liquidity and wondered what the heck does that mean? It means there's no receivable sats. Now, when I open a payment channel to Bob, the sats are all going to be on my side. So when I open a channel to Bob, I don't have inbound liquidity. I don't have receivable sats. And if I'm a store owner, I want inbound liquidity, right? Because I want to be able to receive payments. I want to sell stuff, okay? So we're going to learn today about how liquidity management works. We're going to learn how payment channels work, and we're going to open payment channels and send and receive payments over the Lightning Network. Now, this is a LARP. We're opening real channels, but are we going to be sending real sats? No. Bitcoin has a test network. Bitcoin actually, in fact, has 3 test networks. of Satoshis that we can use to LARP with. It's a live action role play using what's called RegTest. How many of you have heard of RegTest? It's a Bitcoin test network that does not require proof of work. I can mine blocks whenever I want. In fact, I've set the RegTest to mine blocks every 5 seconds. So if you open a payment channel to Bob, that channel gets confirmed on chain in 5 seconds. Okay? All right. Now, in this example, I have what's called a balanced channel. And what does that mean, balanced channel? I've got liquidity or Satoshis on both sides. So I can send to Bob, and Bob can send to me. Now, can I send more than 500K sats to Bob through this payment channel? I can't send more Satoshis than I have. So now you're getting to see how the Lightning Network is constrained by the liquidity in the payment channels, right? And it's not just one payment channel, it's all of them. Now, what if I want to send sats to Carol by way of Bob? I need liquidity not only in my channel to Bob, but Bob needs to have liquidity in his channel to Carol. Make sense? Now, it's not enough just to have Satoshis in that channel. The Satoshis have to be on the appropriate side of the channel. Now, in this example, we have 2 balanced channels. I can send sats to Carol, no problem, right? I can send those sats to Bob, and Bob can forward those along the way to Carol. Got it? We got it. Now, in this example, I don't have a payment channel to Carol, but Bob does. So can I send sats to Carol in this example by way of Bob? Why not? We've got a channel. Now, Bob does have a channel to Carol, but he doesn't have sendable Satoshis. He doesn't have local liquidity. He doesn't have outbound liquidity. So even though we have the channels, and even though there are Satoshis in both channels, the liquidity has to be on the correct side of these bi-directional channels. Got it? Now, how many of you are in PlebNet? PlebNet is the destination for Lightning node runners. If you want to be a Lightning node runner, I highly recommend you join us at plebnet.io. Now, 2.5 years ago, this is what the channel graph looked like in PlebNet. Each of these nodes is a Lightning node with payment channels that are represented by lines. So you can see in the PlebNet graph, we could route payments through our friends. How cool is that? Now, after a short period of time, PlebNet grew to look like this. And the channel graph is almost impossible to follow. But you can imagine that we routed a lot of payments on Bitcoin mainnet. In fact, at one point, we had 1/3 of the liquidity on the entire Lightning network. And I think that's pretty impressive. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to recreate the magic of bootstrapping this friendship graph. And we're going to create a payment graph of payment nodes and channels on RegTest. Now, right now, I'll show you what that graph looks like, if I can find it. Well, I'll let you guys get started, and I will pull up what our graph is going to look like. Okay, so back to our wallet. Now, I have given everybody 1 whole Bitcoin. Now, how many Satoshis are in a Bitcoin? 100 million. So you have 1 whole Bitcoin you can use to open payment channels to your new friends. Okay? Now, those payment channels can be in any amount that you'd like. I'm not sure if I enabled Wumbo. Does anybody know what Wumbo is? What's Wumbo? Wumbo channels are extra large channels of over 6 million Satoshis. So off the top of my head, I'm not sure if I enabled that. But I know without a shadow of a doubt, you're going to be able to open channels to at least 6 million Satoshis. So how do you open a payment channel to your counterparty? You're going to click this info button, and you're going to see a node ID as well as a socket represented in a QR code. Okay? So you're going to scan this QR code, and you're going to input the amount you would like your payment channel to be. Now, there's one caveat here. If for whatever reason you're unable to scan this on your phone, there's an easy fix. You're going to scan this using the Clams wallet. But if you can't, just open up your camera. Open up your camera and click this little button here. Do you guys see this little button here in the lower right-hand corner? That will give you the string you can then copy and paste into Clams. And I'll show you one more time. So I want to open a channel. I'm going to click Input. I'm going to attempt to scan this with Clams. If for whatever reason I can't, I'm going to paste that string into the text field. Okay? All right. Now this is a LARP, and there's two objectives today. One of them is to master the art of node running. But we can learn that at home. We have Google, we have plebnet.wiki, we have books. But why are we really here? Why did we come all the way out to Vegas? Why did we get on a plane, leave the comfort of our homes? What's the real reason we're here? The people, okay? How many of you have met friends so far? How many of you would like to meet more? Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to get up on our feet, and we're going to introduce ourselves to new friends. And in that introduction, we're going to open channels to one another. Now, one more thing. When you introduce yourself to a person who you've never met, please don't just open a channel to them and then walk away. What else are we going to do? Ask them their name. Say hello. Ask where they came in from, if they would like to share. Strike up a conversation. And when you see them at the bar tonight, you're going to buy them a drink, and you're going to let them know, hey, we've got a channel together. Let's hang. And when Bitcoin's $1 million per coin, you're going to remember the people who you opened payment channels to when Bitcoin was under 6 figures. Okay? Any questions before we get started? You absolutely can. Open a channel to me. All right, now while you guys are LARPing, and I want to see everybody on their feet, introducing themselves to not just the people that they came with, to somebody new. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up what our channel graph looks like. And by the way, this channel graph is going to be through the perspective of my node. Nope, you're not going to scan your neighbor's card. You are going to click on the info button on your Clams wallet, and that's going to show you your node ID as well as your socket or your IP and port, all in a nice compact QR code. And you're going to scan this to open a payment channel to your neighbor. Now, if for whatever reason you're having trouble scanning with the Clams camera, go ahead and open up the camera on your device and copy and paste that code from that interface. Now, for whatever reason you need a third way, you can always send these connection strings out of band, on Telegram, or whatever messaging app you prefer. Your channel size is however big you'd like it to be. Oh, yeah, let's make it at least, I like to make mine at least 1 million. I love it, yeah. So when you open a channel to someone, all the sats are going to be on your side. You can open multiple channels if you'd like. It's up to you. I'm going to have you open. I'm going to have you open a channel to your neighbor. Who needs a channel? Okay, let's get another channel because we're going to have two. So could you come over here? So we're going to have multiple channels, multiple neighbors. A few seconds. It's going to have to confirm that on the blockchain. Now this is the reg test blockchain, but it still has to confirm. You do. I think they had trouble under 100 sats. Yeah. That's a good one. All right. If for whatever reason your wallet says disconnected, just come up and grab another QR. Do you guys get that? If anyone needs another connection string, we've got plenty to pass around. Hey, yeah. Does yours say disconnected?
When I tried it, it just says.
Here, let's go here. Okay, you're connected.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and try another one. Yeah. All right, once you've got your channels open, you're going to want to send and receive some sats. So go ahead and click the receive button, the plus in the upper right-hand corner, and you're going to generate a Bolt 11 invoice. By clicking create, you can leave the amount empty. Now, your channel partner is going to scan your QR code in the same way that we scanned the connection string and pay that invoice. You can go ahead and input your amount. Now it can't be more than the channel. Now, once you've sent sats through this Bolt 11 invoice, can you reuse the same invoice? You can't. You got to create a new one. You got it. Let's see how our channel graph is doing. I'm gonna redraw the graph. Ooh. All right. This is us. This is us through the perspective of the D++ node. The D++ node is green. So if there are people who aren't connected to this island of channels, my node won't know about them. So again, this is the channel graph from my perspective. It's not syncing? All right, once you've got your channels open, you are going to send and receive sats through those channels. To send and receive sats, you're going to click the Receive button in the upper right-hand corner, and then click Create to generate what's called a Bolt 11 invoice. Now, these invoices are one-time use, and if you're the payer of the invoice, you have to make sure that you have sendable sats on your channel that can go out to the recipient. If you have channels that only have receivable sats, you cannot pay this invoice. Does anybody not have a channel open? All right, we need a channel over here. Anybody else not have a channel open? Once you have your channels open, I want you to send and receive sats. And by the way, make some new friends. Send and receive sats to someone who you don't have a channel with and see if you can utilize the network graph to route that payment. All right. We're gonna say goodbye to the live streamers, but the rest of us are gonna stay and LARP for 10 more minutes before lunch. Now at this point, everyone has a channel. You all should have sent and received sats through those channels. Now there's one thing you may have noticed, is that those Bolt 11 invoices are not reusable. Now what if there was a way to create a reusable QR payment code in Lightning? Wouldn't that be amazing? Well, ask and you shall receive. The Clams wallet, because it uses core Lightning under the hood, is enabled with Bolt 12 offers. Who has heard of Bolt 12? And who has been dying to use it? Well, today is the day you can tell all of your friends, you can brag on Twitter that you have used Bolt 12. So you're gonna create a Bolt 12 offer. It's gonna default to pay. You don't have to enter it